Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's September 15th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And I thought I'd start by showing you the daily chart again. You can see we're in a little congested area. This, even though this is a very bullish bar, it's all inside this bar beside it, which is still stacked beside these other two. So I'm not ready to say we're going to bounce higher yet. Doesn't mean we can't. This could continue on tomorrow, but it could just as easily reach this high here and turn back down again. We haven't quite reached the green band, which has generally been in this most recent few times back. That's generally where we've been turning at the green band. A couple of times we pushed through it, but generally we would turn about there. So I'm not ready to say, I mean, that we're going higher yet, but this looks promising, and maybe we're close to finding a bottom. I would say too that there's a little channel working down, and that's the first close outside, so it's very likely we make a retest of the lows, unless this is just going to be sideways action after failing out of this previous sideways action. Maybe this is not going to continue down, but just work sideways. So we just got to see. Um, it turned out to be a very bullish day, but when we go to the regular chart, you'll see that we just had a late rally that was relatively strong, but for the most part of the day, we were in a sideways action in the lower half of this bar. So this did close pretty favorably. But let's go look at the other chart. And if you look here at the 2000 tick chart, we spent most of the day in this very tight range, which is maybe, I'm not sure how wide that is. Let's just take a quick gander at it. Maybe 15 or 20 points. About 19 points almost there. So we stayed within a 19 point, which that's a fairly big range actually. I can remember when a 20 point day was a big day. But right now it doesn't seem like much. It seems like a really tight range. But these trends are big enough to trade if you can get in them. That's the problem. There's really they just reverse off the other side each time. And this one you might have taken a short here. I didn't mark it, but there's a possibility you might go short right there. Generally, you're better off to wait on the lower high, but we'll talk about those when we get to it. It just was kind of hard to know what was going on here because we've been running from the top to the bottom to the top, and here we didn't get back to the bottom, and we kept trying and trying, but we couldn't get back through that midpoint of this channel. And eventually, after enough tries, they give up and they go higher and they test the highs, and it doesn't hold. And once we break out, it's off to the races to the upside. We had two legs up. We didn't quite get two measured legs. You can see we came up short of that. You had that big strong leg, then you had your correction here, and then it looked like we were going to run straight on up, but we just kind of ran out of steam. And I watched some of this right in here pretty closely right after lunch, and it just seemed like there was no buying or selling. We'd run up and then run down and run up, and prices would just sit there in the middle with nobody buying or selling. So I think we're just to a price point where people are a little afraid to buy, but nobody wanted to sell either. And eventually, when it couldn't go lower after 3 attempts, it finally went higher. On the third attempt higher, it went higher. And that's generally what will happen. If you test something, if you get that triple test and it holds, and notice we had a double top here. This was actually a higher high than this one. So once it broke out here, people were assuming, hey, we're not going lower, so we got to go higher, and that's kind of what happens, and we eventually go higher. And that's what happened here. We couldn't go lower, so eventually they're going to take it higher and test the upper, and they start testing the upper resistance until it won't go anymore, and it'll come down and test lower resistance. That's what really all prices do, is they test support and resistance. And that's why these channels work, because the trend line on the way up is the support, and the trend channel line, or the other side of the channel, is always the resistance. And it acts as resistance in turn, and prices just flip back and forth, and that's what's happening right here. And that's why your prices should fit in there neatly till they break or give way. And you can see it on the way down. This channel right here is acting as resistance on the trend line and support on the other side, and you can see the midline holding in there as well. So that's really all prices do, is they go between support and resistance. And when one of them starts holding and you can't get through there, the prices will reverse and they'll start testing resistance on the upside until they can't go any further, and they'll reverse and do the same thing to the downside again. And if the trend line keeps holding and it's down, then the trend's going to continue down until you get the close outside a new low and it reverses. I mean, all of these channels just about were perfect price action. This one didn't play out here. Notice you got your channel working down. You got a close outside. It tried to go lower multiple times and couldn't. They kept trying to take it lower and couldn't. So eventually it goes higher. And they test this up here, and it doesn't. It looks like it's going to hold, and it doesn't, and then it goes higher. So anyway, let's back out. We'll go through the trades, or let's zoom in, I should say, and we'll go through the trades. 7 o'clock came. We were trending down here, and 7 o'clock came just in this little correction here. Notice you got a new low, and you get a first entry, and then it turns up and turns back down. You get a second entry short. I don't know. I mean, this is such a bearish bar. It'd probably be okay to go short right here, but it gaps over and keeps going. I don't know if you'd have got filled. You'd probably had to use a limit order, and I don't know if you'd have got filled. I think you were better off to play this when it came through the low side here, after it had turned back up, and when it came back through, when it came through this low side, you might go short there. Otherwise, you could try down here. I don't know if you'd have got filled or not. I'm not as crazy about it down here either, because you're getting into this resistance, but the lows are way down here, and you would expect prices are probably going to at least make a new a low lower than this where we got the break here, and we're probably going to test this low. And we did. We actually made a little lower low and bounced. There's a higher low here. It does close above the EMA, but that's just a first entry. It's not a failed second entry short or anything, so I don't see an entry there. I just think you have to sit tight. You do get a failed second entry short there that fails, so I mean, that's not really it's just sideways right there. You don't really want to, but notice what happens. You get to close outside, you move to a new high, and it turns down. If this wasn't so sideways here and you had a little more room back to the EMA, I'd say you may go short there. But you're better off to wait on the lower high, which comes right here. And it's possible some of y'all might have taken this lower high, but I'd wait on the second entry short here. And you don't get that till back up here when you get this triple test. Notice that low, first entry, second entry. And you get a second entry short. And it actually breaks higher first, but look how bearish that is. That's almost, it's just hard to pass that up. It does pull back again and then turn down. So you had to ride this one out a little bit, but that is a very bearish bar on a triple test. And you do have a close outside and a new high in place. And on top of that, and notice too that this thing didn't turn down until we made the new high. We didn't quite make a new high here, so that means we could go higher. And that's another reason I like probably going long on this second entry. This is a double top, so and this is just sideways. That looks like one leg, and then you try to go lower again, it fails. I like going long right there. It's a little aggressive just because you're underneath the EMA, but I like it because we haven't made a new high on this channel yet. We tried, but we didn't quite make it. And so now we get it, and then it sells off, and it goes right where you would expect it to, down in the lows. And that was the other thing. We didn't make the lows here yet. So that gives you a little more confidence on this triple test that, hey, we should be going lower here. Doesn't mean you will, but that's the odds say we're probably going to go lower. And once it takes off, it's kind of off to the races. There's a failed second entry long here, but that looks too congestive. I don't like that. This signal bar, you might say, hey, let's buy these lows down here, but you're just throwing darts at a board trying to do that. You really need to wait on a higher low, which you don't get until way up here, and you don't want to be taking a higher low way up here. You finally come up here and you get a pullback first entry, pullback second entry. I didn't mark this one because this really looks like one leg, and we just did come off the top. We prices will probably try to make a new high, but they may not because this is the high of the range. But sure enough, they end up making a new high before it sells off again. And that's price action for you. But I didn't like going long again. And again, you might take that one. If you took that trade, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But it's a little bit aggressive. It looks a little congestive. We did just come off the highs, but when you try to go lower twice more and fail, then you get this all these stems down here. That's telling you that market's just really, there's a lot of buying coming in every time it comes back to the EMA. I like going long there. That's also a second entry long. There's a new high, first entry, second entry. I wouldn't probably worry about counting second entries in there because you've got the resistance across there. But you can clearly say we're making higher lows each time, and on a failed second entry short, you should get with plenty of room back to here, you'll probably get that scalp. And of course you run up here and you do finally make a new high. And that's a fairly bearish bar on a failed breakout, but generally you need that lower high, and that doesn't come till down here. And that's not a true reversal pattern because it's not a failed second entry long. It's just a lower high, but it's kind of congestive. It does come right off the EMA though. It did shoot right through it. It looks very bearish, and you would expect prices to come down now. So that's another one you may take. It's just not a great high probability setup though. And then of course you come down here and you get the break. Get a first entry and then a second entry. Not a very good setup. And you actually could look at this as two legs back here, but again, not a very good setup for a second entry long or anything. And really, you're still expecting prices to try to come down, but they just can't do it. They just keep working sideways here, and you get a little failure, but no setup. There's a higher low here, and it would have worked, but again, I don't recommend taking that trade. You've got this little channel working lower, and you haven't had a new low yet, and of course it does try to come back pretty quickly and test that low and fails. But look how many times we've bounced across there. And when you get another double test of that, and it's high, each one of these lows is higher than that bullish bar, I like going long there. You might let this break higher and drop a limit order a few ticks back just to get a little better entry because that's such a big bar. It's like 15 ticks. And it did break higher and pull back, so you could have gotten filled a few ticks back in that, and just to make sure you get out before that high as well. And it wouldn't have mattered, it keeps going. But the only reason I like that long is because of how many times we bounce there, and then you get this little trap here too. But it's really kind of hard to know what's going on in there because you would expect prices to be coming down, and they can't get through the support here, but they're not really climbing back to the highs yet until you made this trap, and then they push you up, and then you make another breakout. I definitely wouldn't take that short. I'd wait on a lower high, and you actually get a lower high here on the second entry short. Notice that new low, first entry, second entry. It fails temporarily, comes back. I like entering there again. If you didn't enter here, especially enter right here. It's good for a scalp, a little more, and then it bounces, and then from here we break on out and go higher. But yeah, when we couldn't go any lower here, we couldn't even get a measured leg down. I was expecting at least a measured leg on this. I really thought this would go lower, back to at least right here, and we couldn't do it. And when it tries to go lower a couple more times, I don't think you want to get long in here. It's just dangerous going long right into that. When it came back another time here, you might consider this is a trap, but there's just not a good enough signal bar because this is technically your signal bar, even though it's a very bullish bar, and if it breaks higher there, we're probably going higher. I just don't think you want to risk it. And unfortunately, if you don't enter right in here, take a chance, and too many times you'll get burned trying to go long in there. But if you don't take a chance, you're going to be you miss out on this, and there's no way to get into it till way up here. So I marked this one. I like this trade to the long side. This is a really strong trend up here, and you're going to probably make a new high. And if you take the measured move too, we're not quite there. If you measure the distance here, that's this blue line, a measured move of the actual width of the range. And you can see we weren't quite there yet. So I like this one. It is a first entry, second entry, and that's a fairly big bullish bar. It's real small too. It's very low risk, maybe 6 ticks or something there. But it is a little congested. I mean, you see it came back, and there's a chance you could have got stopped out there. If you didn't enter here, I definitely don't think I would enter after this bar, even though it jumps up real quick. I mean, by that time, I'm guessing most of your smart traders said it just feels too early, it feels too congested, and they weren't willing to take that entry. But when it tried to go lower again and makes that triple bottom, you could look at that as a failed second entry short as well. It looks like that gave people enough incentive to say, hey, well, they can't take it lower, we're going higher now. And notice you got a double bottom here, so that's a new, you can treat that like a new low, and you get a first entry, second entry. And so that's a failed second entry short and a decent signal bar. That's probably the smartest place to enter. But you can tell that's what happened here. Enough traders weren't willing to commit to that. But when it failed to go lower again, you can see when it turned up. And I'm guessing too, probably a lot of shorts. When it broke higher there and looked like it was going to fail and went lower, people were probably treating that as a failed second entry long and going to try to ride it back to the EMA, so they trapped them. And you can tell that by how that takes off. When it takes off like that, and then the trend reasserts itself and leg 2 starts. There's another pullback right here to the trend line. Very small bar, like 4 ticks, very low risk. It's just a first entry. So you might treat, there's one other thing that you might look at too. Notice this is a double bottom right across here. So that's a first entry, second entry. So that's another reason. I didn't mark this one earlier, and I'm still hesitant to mark it blue. But you may want to take that trade. It's so low risk. And you've got the trend line at your back, you got the EMA at your back, you got the former resistance, or what should have been resistance. It's pretty much only acted as support. So you got a lot of support at your back here. Of course, you're not going to risk all that much, but there's just a good chance you're going higher off that trend line, because this was a really strong move up, and the prices are going to probably try to make a second leg up. Especially since the measured move didn't hold. That's giving you a clue too that, hey, the market's stronger than what it should be, because generally you'd expect prices to find some resistance there and turn down at least a few times before they went higher. And then of course we just start working sideways here. And there's another second entry long here. But it's an inside bar, and it's well below the EMA, but it's not so far away that you expect prices to have to turn back up yet. There's a chance you could get trapped right there. So, and there's actually a little trend channel working down. And that's your first break. And notice once you get the new low, then it tries to go higher, but it ends up just being a range here is what happens. But still, I don't like going long there until you get that third test. And again, you get another first entry, second entry. The only reason I made this green is not a very good signal bar. There's still a little bit of stem there, as you can see. Let me make this bigger. I'm sorry. And that concerns me, but you can see it wasn't long. It went higher. And you would expect prices to, each time they've gone from one side to the next. So from here, if this holds, you would expect that we're going up to the high side. But you can see quickly it didn't hold on the high side, and we were racing higher again. So notice you get a first entry and then the second entry, and it fails. I like going long there. And if you wait just a few more minutes, you get a second entry long here. You probably want to enter when it broke above here. The only problem with this is it's an inside bar. So you really were better off to wait on this bar and go long right here. Maybe you let it break higher and drop a limit order and see if it comes back, because you don't have a lot of room there to that high. But either way, I like it. It's a second entry long. It's the first break of that channel, right, going up right there. It's a fairly bullish bar. It has a lot going for it. And then, of course, we make the new high, a couple of legs up to a new high, and then we're headed down. I'm sure somebody's probably going to ask me about this one. You got a new high, first entry, second entry, but it really only looks like one leg down to that point, and this just looks kind of like sideways. So to me, that is a very bearish bar. It's very tempting, and it does close below the EMA. So if you went short there, I probably wouldn't. It's a little bit congested too. I probably wouldn't bother me too much if somebody says, "Hey, I went short there." It is a little aggressive though. So, but if you took that trade, because I can see it being a very tempting trade. I mean, there is a first entry, second entry, but to me, it only looks like one leg down there, because this looks like sideways stuff. So there's a good chance it turns down. It pushes down just a little, turns back up, and then you would get your reversal pattern. But I think that's pretty much it. And that takes you into the 3 o'clock. There's nothing else down there that I would be interested in. So really, that's what we saw. Most of the day was spent in this range. We spent almost half the day, or maybe even a little more than half the day, down here in the lower part of this bar, of the big daily bar. But by the end of the day, it reversed and closed very bullish. Now, I'm not convinced that I'm not going to say we're not going higher tomorrow, but let's just go back. I'm not going to say that we can't go higher from here, but this is, even as bullish as this is, it's still traded within inside the previous day's bar. So it just looks like it looks like a down up type situation. So it looks congested to me, and we could just keep going sideways. We could trade a little higher here, turn down off those highs, and we do have what looks a little bit like a channel coming down here, and that's the first close outside, so we may try to make a new low on it. I'd like to see us at least get down into the green inside of that, maybe to the purple before. That would be a much better place to find a reversal at than right here with all that sideways stuff. I definitely wouldn't play this as a reversal if I was trading the daily chart. Not yet. Again, I'm not saying we can't go higher right there, because it could very well happen, but I wouldn't play it as that. I just think it's too early yet to look for a reversal with all that sideways action. I mean, we could go higher and fail and turn back down and make a whole nother leg down. So doesn't mean we can't go higher even just tomorrow temporarily before we turn back down again. So, I mean, we had some pretty bearish movement down here. Wouldn't surprise when we had a couple of days correction, and then maybe some more downward action. So just be prepared to go either way tomorrow. So it might just be another inside bar, another bar that stacks up sideways. So that means we could trade up or down. Actually, we'd have to start downward, but before the day's over, we could trade both ways strongly in either direction. So, all right, that's going to do it. It's going to wrap us up for today. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow, and that'll wrap up our week on Thursday. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next